The era of mob bosses is a fascinating and tumultuous period in American history that stretches from the early 20th century into the mid-1900s. This era is characterized by the rise of organized crime syndicates that emerged primarily in major cities like New York and Chicago. These syndicates were often controlled by powerful crime families headed by influential mob bosses. The mob bosses wielded enormous power through illegal activities such as bootlegging, gambling, racketeering, and later, drug trafficking. The introduction to this era is crucial for understanding the intense rivalry between two of the most infamous figures in organized crime, Al Capone and Charles "Lucky" Luciano. The significance of this era lies in its deep impact on American society and its enduring influence on popular culture. During this time, mob bosses like Capone and Luciano challenged law enforcement and exploited prohibition laws, which banned the manufacture and sale of alcohol. They created a lucrative underground economy and left a legacy of both fear and fascination. Understanding this era provides context for the power dynamics and territorial disputes between mob bosses, which often escalated into violent confrontations. A real-world illustration of this era is the notorious St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, which epitomizes the ruthless violence associated with mob rivalries of the time. Orchestrated by Al Capone's gang, it resulted in the deaths of 7 members of a rival faction. Another example is Luciano's role in establishing the Commission, a governing body for organized crime families that helped restructure and stabilize the underworld activities across the country. Opinions about this era are divided. Some view mob bosses as pernicious criminals who corrupted society, while others see them as folk heroes who defied a flawed system, especially during Prohibition. This dichotomy adds complexity to their narratives and contributes to their legendary status. Challenges and controversies associated with this era include the romanticization of mobsters in media and the difficulty of law enforcement to combat organized crime due to widespread corruption and limited resources. Additionally, alternative viewpoints might question the extent to which mob bosses actually controlled societal aspects or argue that their influence has been exaggerated. This period connects to the overarching rivalry between Capone and Luciano, as it sets the stage for their rise to power and the subsequent clash over territory, influence, and control of the lucrative illegal markets. The dynamics of this era provide the backdrop for understanding the cunning strategies, betrayals, and alliances that characterize their infamous feud. The heading "The Great Mob Boss Rivalry Capone vs. Luciano" delves into one of the most compelling narratives in organized crime history. Centering around Al Capone and Charles "Lucky" Luciano, two of the most infamous mob bosses of the early 20th century. This rivalry encapsulates the power struggle and contrasting criminal methodologies that defined the American underworld during Prohibition. Capone, known for his brutal and flashy approach, reigned over Chicago with an iron fist, orchestrating violent acts that left a permanent mark on the city's history. Luciano, on the other hand, was the architect of the modern Mafia, structuring organized crime into a nationwide syndicate that focused on cooperation and secrecy over brute force. The significance of this rivalry highlights the divergent strategies within organized crime, illustrating a shift from violent territorial disputes to a more corporatized and strategic approach. This evolution was crucial, as it allowed organized crime to expand and integrate into the broader fabric of American society. The contrast between Capone's notoriously public criminal antics and Luciano's emphasis on behind-the-scenes influence underscores the transition from a violent, street-level operation to a stealthy, organized empire. Two notable examples that illustrate this point include the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, orchestrated under Capone's command, which epitomized the violent tactics of his reign, and Luciano's establishment of the Commission, a governing body designed to mediate disputes and manage operations across different crime families. This not only solidified his power, but also ensured a relatively peaceful coexistence among organized crime factions, a stark contrast to the bloody conflicts seen under Capone's dominance. Opinions on this rivalry are varied. Some admire Luciano's strategic acumen and ability to modernize the Mafia, viewing him as a visionary. Conversely, others criticize his manipulative methods and the enduring legacy of crime he fostered. Critics of Capone, meanwhile, often point to the destructive nature of his regime, though some see his brutal honesty and straightforward approach as a reflection of the times. However, this narrative is not without its challenges. Some argue that emphasizing individual rivalries oversimplifies the complex network of alliances and conflicts that typified the era. Additionally, the glorification of mob bosses, whether through tales of rivalry or power, can romanticize criminal activity. Ultimately, the Capone-Luciano rivalry influences our understanding of organized crime's evolution, marking a pivotal shift from violence-driven operations to strategic and structured entities. This transformation has had lasting impacts on both criminal activity and law enforcement tactics worldwide, illustrating how two distinct approaches can shape the trajectory of an entire underworld culture. The background of Al Capone and Charles "Lucky" Luciano is fundamental to understanding the dynamics and impact of the great mob boss rivalry. Alphonse Gabriel Capone, often referred to as Scarface, became the face of organized crime in Chicago during the Prohibition era. Known for his ruthless business tactics and lavish lifestyle, Capone's operations were a significant part of the illegal alcohol trade. On the other hand, Charles "Lucky" Luciano, born Salvatore Lucania, was instrumental in transforming the structure of organized crime in America, establishing the national crime syndicate and laying the groundwork for the modern mafia. This comparison between Capone and Luciano is significant, as it highlights two contrasting approaches to leadership and organization within the criminal underworld. Capone's reign was marked by high visibility and a penchant for violence, which ultimately led to his downfall through a tax evasion conviction. In contrast, Luciano favored a more strategic and collaborative approach, working behind the scenes to form alliances that strengthened his influence and created a more sustainable enterprise. Two specific examples illustrate their methodologies. Capone's involvement in the infamous Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929, which aimed to eliminate rivals and assert his dominance, showcases his brutal tactics. Meanwhile, Luciano's role in the formation of the Commission in 1931, a governing body for organized crime families, demonstrates his focus on cooperation and conflict resolution to maintain order and maximize profits. Opinions about these figures vary, with some viewing Luciano's strategic foresight as a pioneering force that modernized organized crime, while others criticize his actions as setting the foundation for future crime escalation. Similarly, Capone is sometimes seen as a tragic figure, a byproduct of a corrupted society, while others solely denounce his violent methods. Several challenges and controversies surround this topic. Capone's notoriety and eventual conviction highlight the difficulty of maintaining a public profile while engaged in illegal activities. Conversely, Luciano's approach, while seemingly more sustainable, raises ethical questions about the long-term impacts of organized crime on society. The rivalry between Capone and Luciano is pivotal, as it underscores the evolution of organized crime from a collection of loosely affiliated gangs to a sophisticated network. Their backgrounds and methodologies influenced not only their legacies, but also the ongoing operations of criminal enterprises, highlighting the delicate balance of power, strategy, and visibility in maintaining control within the underworld. This rivalry reflects broader themes of ambition, authority, and the relentless pursuit of success, deeply influencing the landscape of organized crime in America. The heading, "The Great Mob Boss Rivalry, Capone versus Luciano," introduces the concept of a notorious power struggle between two of history's most infamous organized crime figures. Al Capone and Charles "Lucky" Luciano were key players during the Prohibition era and the early 20th century, each dominating their respective territories and leaving indelible marks on the criminal underworld. Capone, known for his brutal reign in Chicago, exemplified the quintessential gangster persona. His operations capitalized on bootlegging and illicit activities, infamously maintaining power through violence and fear. Luciano, on the other hand, was a visionary who transformed organized crime by establishing the National Crime Syndicate, a coalition that brought together various gangs under a single cohesive organization. The significance of this rivalry lies in their contrasting styles and the impact they had on the evolution of organized crime. Capone's era was marked by overt violence and media attention, while Luciano's contribution was in his strategic, business-like reorganization of crime into a national enterprise, paving the way for the modern mafia. This rivalry highlights the shift from brute force to more sophisticated, covert operations that characterize the future of organized crime in America. For specific examples, consider the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, orchestrated under Capone's watch. It demonstrated his ruthless approach to eliminating rivals, cementing his reputation, but also drawing intense law enforcement scrutiny. In contrast, Luciano's creation of the Commission, a governing body for the Mafia, allowed for coordinated operations across the country, reducing intergang conflicts and ensuring sustained criminal enterprises. This pivotal move ensured organized crime's survival and growth in the face of increased legal pressure. Opinions supporting this idea often praise Luciano for his strategic ingenuity, viewing him as a pioneering force who understood the value of cooperation over conflict. On the other hand, Capone is sometimes seen as a cautionary tale of unchecked power, ultimately leading to his downfall through law enforcement efforts. However, this concept doesn't come without challenges and controversies. The romanticized view of these figures overlooks the real damage and violence caused by their operations. Moreover, some argue the focus on individual figures overshadows the broader social and economic context that allowed such figures to rise. This rivalry connects deeply to the main topic, as it underscores the tension between different methods of maintaining power within the criminal underworld. It illustrates the evolution of organized crime strategies and their lasting impact on both criminal operations and law enforcement practices. Understanding this rivalry provides insights into the shifting dynamics within the underworld and its continuous influence on criminal organizations today.